So what I'm suggesting is that we all have been lied to and convinced that the self is a singular entity. And so we have the temerity, the audacity to walk around using language like myself, yourself. We've been so misguided. We have a multitude of selves. And this multicultural perspective requires us to make this paradigmatic shift from this singular view of the self to a multidimensional view of the self. And yes, you're absolutely correct, that to walk around and suggest that myself and yourselves is something about that is uniquely awkward semantically. And anybody who is connected to the psychiatry field will tell you that it raises serious psychiatric implications. But I think it is a very accurate representation of who we are and what we are and how it is we ought to be. And so I think this, when you're talking about working across cultural boundaries, I think the first step has to do with not learning about other, but discovering ourselves. Because too often we try to help others, save others, rescue others, and we are infinitely cut off from ourselves. And so what I would suggest to you is that we have a multitude of selves, that we have a gendered self. And the gendered self provides a prism through which we see the world, how we believe we are seen, and how we see others. And so that whether we overtly acknowledge it or not, that we see the world through the prism of gender. And gender is not insignificant in our interactions. That we have a sexual orientation self. And so that I know that lots of heterosexuals believe that, well, it's just normal. But we have a prism through which we see the world. And sexual orientation shapes how we are seen and how we see others. We have a racial self, and race is a powerful dimension in our society. And so oftentimes we perpetrate this fraud that, well, we're talking about race, we must be talking about people of color, as if whites don't have a race. Well, we talk about race, we're talking about all of us, white folks, black folks, brown folks, yellow, red, all of us. And race provides a powerful prism through which we see the world. It shapes how we see each other. It shapes how we see ourselves. And so what I'm suggesting is that, I've been in recovery, and I'd love to say this, for quite some time now, from the training I received as a clinician. And my recovery is going well because part of the way I was trained was to sort of believe in this notion of objectivity. I have no idea what that refers to. I don't know what it is. I tell every single client that comes to see me, if you're looking for an objective therapist, I am not one. I'm not an objective friend. I'm not objective in anything I do. I am wholly, 100%, uncompromisingly, irrefutably subjective. And that I see the world through all of my selves. That my experience as African American shapes what I see, how I respond, what I don't respond to. Male, all the parts of me shape what I do. And so the thought that somehow I could possibly be a tabula rasa, a blank slate. How could I possibly be a blank slate? When I walk around with all of these pieces of who I am that's informing me on every possible interaction. And so what I'm suggesting is, if we're thinking about establishing collaboratives across cultural boundaries, that we first have to become acquainted with who we are before we attempt to participate in those collaboratives. Because whether we recognize who we are or not, they jump out in front of us.